Another story that I think is really worth considering, and I'm curious what you might be doing about this with regard to your bank. Many of us are waking up today to this story in the McClatchy papers. Regulatory, or the McClatchy News Service in newspapers all over the country, regulatory reports show 5 biggest banks face huge losses. These are apparently some of the, may well be some of the zombie banks. So here's the story. I'll just let it stand on its own. The first 2 paragraphs. America's 5 largest banks, which already have received $145 billion in taxpayer bailout dollars, still face potentially catastrophic losses from exotic investments if economic conditions substantially worsen, their latest financial reports show. This is Citibank, Bank of America, HSBC Bank USA, Wells Fargo Bank, and JP Morgan Chase. Excuse me. They all report that their current net loss from derivatives surged to over $500 billion as of the end of last year. So, and presumably it's gotten worse since then because mortgage foreclosures are still going up, and these derivatives in large part are bets on bets on bets on bets on somebody's going to pay a mortgage off. In fact, just in the last 90 days of the last year of the Bush administration, that was a 49% increase in exposure by these banks. So what do you do? I mean, I've been looking at some of the newsletters that I read, and I remember Jim Sinclair over at JSMineset.com 6 months ago saying if you have, for example, stocks with a brokerage house or with a bank, and they're holding them, call them up and say, would you please have the stock, assuming that you're not doing day trading. Let's say that you're buying stocks for, 6 months, a year, multi-years. Call them up and say, would you please have the company issue the actual stock certificates and mail them to my house? So if the brokerage goes bust, you still have the stocks. Or if the brokerage has been, or if the bank has been, playing funny money or betting with your money, and, somehow your stock gets caught. Yeah, it sounds improbable. It's what happened in the Great Depression. And we have Arlen Specter. Do you have that audio, Sean, of Arlen Specter by any chance? I do. Okay. No, I don't. But in any case, we have. Oh, it's on the wiki. We have the Arlen Specter now coming out and saying, it might be Great Depression time. I mean, consider how bizarre that is. And I'll share that with you after the break. It'll take me a minute to pull it up. But the bottom line is that these are very bizarre times. Now, here's the question. Beyond that, number one, I'm curious, what your thoughts are on this. I actually. I was talking with a friend and colleague this morning who said that, every week they're going to start hitting the bank and pulling out a couple $1,000. That they've got friends who are doing the same thing. I mean, physically, $100 bills, and taking them home and sticking them in places where people won't find them. There's a big business, by the way. Over on Amazon, you can buy hollowed-out books. They look like a regular book, but it's actually a secret hiding place. You stick it on your bookshelf. There are cans of deodorant and foot spray and household cleaners where you unscrew the bottom, and inside you can stash gold coins or diamonds or $100 bills or whatever. I mean, people are actually using these things. They wall plates. They look like a wall switch, or it looks like an electrical outlet. It's actually a hidden place for cash. Have we gotten that far? Have we gone that far? By the way, I am not doing these things. Don't come take my house apart. But I'm wondering, is it time to think about it? And I'm wondering if you're thinking about it. Are you doing it? And how did we get here? It turns out, and Robert Weissman, who has been on this show many, many times over the years, he's the founder of the Multinational Monitor, and just a brilliant writer, wrote a piece that was reprinted over at alternet.org. The question, what can $5 billion buy in Washington, D.C.? And this is the disaster. This is the real disaster of the way that we fund elections in the United States, is how small an investment you have to make in buying politicians to make a huge return. Look at all the defense contractors who invest, a few $1 billion here and there, and they make hundreds of billions of dollars in profits. Halliburton is a great example, which isn't even an American company anymore. And Kellogg Brown and Root, right in the middle of the war, they reincorporated the Cayman Islands. It was like they were sticking the finger, a finger up at us and saying, "Hey, take this, America. This is Dick Cheney's company." They spin off this company, Kellogg Brown and Root. It's electrocuting soldiers in Iraq and supplying polluted water to people, and they're still making a fortune. And what do? They move to the Cayman Islands so they don't have to pay taxes. What's going on? So anyhow, what's going on is that $5 billion can buy a lot. And that $5 billion investment in Washington, D.C. and our politicians is what, by and large, has brought us to this disaster. And here's what they bought. From 1998 to 2008, the financial sector, banks, brokerage houses, the gamblers, they spent $5 billion in Washington, D.C. on campaign contributions and lobbying expenditures. This is why we need to outlaw lobbying by corporations, as Teddy Roosevelt proposed in 1907, and why we need to go to public financing of elections. The first thing that they went after was the Glass-Steagall Act. This was passed in 1933, and it said that banks and investment houses have to be separate entities. So-called investment banks, gambling banks, banks that buy and sell stocks and things, that can't be the place where you put your savings or where you get your mortgage. A regular bank and a gambling bank, an investment bank, have to be two separate companies. And in 1999, Phil Gramm, as a consequence of an enormous amount of lobbying, got the Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999 passed over the signature of Bill Clinton that took down Glass-Steagall. But even before Glass-Steagall went down in 1998, a year in advance, illegally, well, it was legal because they got a waiver, but in violation of the law, but with a waiver, Citibank and Travelers Group merged on the assumption this was going to happen. That's how bad it is.